Okay, we're gonna get this started. It looks like we've got about 24 people here, and we are 1 minute past the session start. Hope some very mellow Sarah Jaros was what everybody was feeling this morning. I'm really excited to get this panel going and hear the wonderful talks by the three women who are here. Just to right up front, in case you are in the wrong session, this session is building community trust through engagement strategies. This is the Behavior, Energy, and Climate Change Conference. If you're randomly found yourself in this Zoom and are confused, and we're super excited to be the first session of the day after getting to hear Michael Pollan speak, which I certainly found inspiring and exciting. I was just telling our speaker panel that I read Omnivore's Dilemma as one of my pandemic reads, so that was great to have it so top of mind. So really excited. You'll notice that, or maybe you don't necessarily notice yet, but we are down one speaker. Francis unfortunately had to pull out last minute yesterday. So we will have a little bit more space and time, hopefully, to have a conversation as a whole group before splitting up into separate rooms. So with that, let me introduce our wonderful panel of speakers. First up, I just realized I didn't introduce myself. So first up is me. I'm Lauren Cheatham. I am a quant researcher at Instagram. What does that have to do with BECC? Absolutely nothing. I just love this conference so much, and I've been involved for many years. I was previously an academic, and I will do anything and everything to always support this brilliant group of people. So that's why I'm here. All right, now on to the more important people, which are our speakers today. First up, we're going to have Hale. Hale is coming to us from beautiful Portland, Oregon. And Hale and I actually go way back, because my very first BECC panel, I was with her, which is makes me feel like we're still here together, which is so great. But Hale is a managing director at the Sea Change Institute, and she spent over a decade applying the science of behavior change to understand and improve customer energy decisions through conducting empirical research, market characterization, and program evaluation. She received her PhD in judgment and decision making from Columbia University. My computer's being wonky. And when she is not conducting research, folks, she's usually out hiking. I imagine that's what most of us like to do on our weekends, et cetera, right outside of Portland with her pup, Rosie. After Hale speaks, we are going to have Anastasia Roy, and she is a lead AP, is a resiliency client program manager at APTIM, where she works to improve the quality of life and safety of communities by identifying strategies to mitigate the complex stressors and shocks associated with climate change. She launches and manages resiliency, sustainability, and energy efficiency programs on behalf of utility, government, and private clients. And recently, she worked with the U.S. Virgin Islands Energy Office to deliver an energy assurance plan that provides a framework for how they can address energy assurance before, during, and after energy disruptions. And she holds an MPA in environmental science and policy, also from Columbia University. Finally, we have Lisa Knobloch. She has a master's degree in sustainable business and communities with an emphasis in sustainable community development. She has over 10 years of experience working both locally and internationally, developing and implementing systems-based strategies that improve community resilience and sustainability, enhance social equity and economic security, and build local capacity. Lisa has extensive experience in engaging a wide variety of stakeholders in the community development process, with an emphasis on equity and inclusion in city planning and decision-making. So, pretty phenomenal set of speakers for today. I hope you all are as excited as I am to hear about what they have to say. I'm going to set some quick expectations. Obviously, everybody should engage on the chat. I will try to keep up with the chat and make sure that I address any concerns that might crop up, or at least notice what questions might be popping up. We would like to keep questions to the very end, so that way we can hopefully engage in a full dialogue across our full panel of speakers. And with that, I am going to hand it over to Hale.
Thanks, Lauren. Can everybody see that okay? Great. It is so nice to see all of your faces / little boxes on Zoom showing that we're here. BECC is one of my favorite conferences, and I'm really excited to be here. I am going to be talking today, and right off the bat, I'm not going to be talking a lot about community trust today. I'm going to be talking about utility trust and utility engagement. So if you're expecting community trust, listen along, you might learn something new or read something else. But I'm really excited about this is work in progress that I'm talking about today. I'm really talking about the relationship between utility trust and engagement and where people go for information when adopting electric, smart, and solar. So as we all know, the energy ecosystem is expanding. And by energy ecosystem, I really mean the ecosystem of products that influence our energy use. We're moving from energy efficiency to more and more smart devices and controls that automate energy use, to electrification, changing the source of our energy towards renewable sources, and also generating renewable energy. And all of these products have different adoption journeys and different adoption considerations for customers. And this is a really diverse group of energy related behaviors that's constantly expanding. So utilities have a variety of ways that they get information to people to get them to adopt these technologies to manage our energy use. And this information comes through a variety of channels, including home energy reports, websites, even information that comes at the point of the product. And the pieces that I want to dive into today is that in particular, a lot of these resources are web-based. And so information is coming directly from the utility website to inform and motivate customers. And increasingly, utilities are adopting product marketplaces, which are websites hosted through the utility that are allowing customers to understand, to select and purchase products like thermostats and smart thermostats to all in one place. And this is further reducing adoption barriers. So these are all resources, some of which have been here for a long time on the web and some of which are new and increasing. But the question when we think about adopting products and all of these web-based resources is really for the Kevin Costner fans out there. If you build it, will they come? And if you're not a Kevin Costner fan, really the question here is, if you're providing these online resources, are people going to use them? And how can you maximize the chances that people are going to use these resources? And these are really, when we talk about the product decision-making process, these are tools that customers wouldn't otherwise see during normal product purchase. We're adding an additional step in the customer journey towards product adoption. So the question that we're really looking at here is, how do we get people to use these resources and what does it take? And the underlying logic of these resources is that in order for these online tools to be effective in motivating adoption, customers have to be aware of them, they have to trust them, and they have to use them in the process. So this is really positioning the utility as a trusted energy advisor, where customers are aware of and engaged with these utility resources, and they're more likely to use these tools to adopt energy ecosystem products over time. And I think it's important to note this is an ongoing process. There's different adoption journeys within each product, but also across products where customers are hopefully engaging with these tools more than once. So as a trusted energy advisor, the utility is hoping to use these resources to influence multiple decisions. So in this today, I'm really going to be diving into how this is going, what's going on here, and give more on both insight into both of the sides of this equation. So, and I'm going to be doing that. This is really just a very small piece of an ongoing research project that has been sponsored by Uplight. We've been doing multiple years of residential quantitative surveys. This is going to be the third year coming up this next year, combined with qualitative deep dive research to look at how customers are making decisions, and also looking at non-residential customers. And throughout all of these research projects, we're looking at issues of this relationship between utility trust, experience, and engagement, and product adoption. And Uplight is And the piece that I'm going to be looking at today is really focusing on this second year of this quantitative research. I'm going to be presenting a couple of results from this survey, which we conducted with 1,000 customers in the spring of this year. And this was a nationally representative sample of residential utility customers. So the questions I'm going to be talking about today are, as I said, really diving into this relationship between the utility as a trusted energy advisor and how these resources are actually influencing information search. So the purpose of today is to give you a preliminary look at where we are now, and specifically look at 3 different research questions. First of all, are customers really seeing their utility as a trusted resource for energy saving information? Utilities have developed these products, but are customers valuing them? And the second question is really on the product adoption side, which is how often are customers using these resources? And how does that levels of customer trust influence that likelihood of use? And the third question is really looking at how this information use is varying across people and across products. So there's kind of 2 types of variance within this system. There's variance within people, how often are people using the tools, but then there's also variance across purchases in this diverse ecosystem. So to what extent are people using these tools consistently, and to what extent are they being used across different product decisions? So let's dive into the first question. So do customers see their utility as a trusted resource for energy saving information? So we asked people to rate their trust of their utility on several different dimensions. The source of information about saving energy, about telling them about outages, about energy use, prices, rates, help with paying their bill. And the 2 areas of trust with highest agreement are really around saving energy. So 2/3 of the customers that we talk to are really agreeing that they're trusting their utility as a source of information about saving energy. In fact, that's higher than a lot of other elements here. So that's great. That's people are really, I mean, that's a good number of people are trusting their utility as a source of information about saving energy. So the second set of questions is really about how that is translating into use of these utility resources to save energy. So we're going to go through a couple of different questions. So we dug into the purchases and information sources in a couple of different ways. So we asked customers to report their purchases in a variety of domains, and then they reported their information sources for each purchase. So we're going to start with this is the list of purchases that we asked customers about, and what they had done in the last year. And these span a couple of different dimensions. Efficiency on the left, LEDs, washers or dryers, refrigerators. And then in the middle, we have smart thermostats, smart products. And then on the right, we're getting into some sort of electrification and renewable products with induction stovetops, rooftop solar, and EVs. And you can see that overall, 75% of the sample had done at least one of these upgrades, and several had done more. And obviously, LEDs are the most frequently reported upgrade, because that's a lot of these upgrades are not something that you would do in a year. So then for each of those purchases, customers reported their information sources that they used when they were thinking about making the purchase. And this list, and so this is showing the overall list across all products, what customers reported purchasing. And we're asking customers about a mix of information sources and also channels. So a lot of customers reported using in person, at a retail store or dealer, at a retailer website, product review site, over the phone, social sources, both in person and social media. And then we also have our kind of focal sources of interest, whether customers reported using the electric website, which was 1/4 of customers, and also whether they use this utility-sponsored online marketplace, which was actually 10% of customers. And so considering a lot of utilities don't have marketplaces yet, this is a relatively new product, that number seems actually quite high. So we also wanted to look, so we have this overall list of sources. So people are reporting using their utility website, but maybe not as frequently as retailers or in person, which is not surprising. We also wanted to look at how this use of the utility website varied across people. So we're finding evidence, unsurprisingly, that customers who are more engaged with their utility are more likely to report consulting their utilities website during the process. This is correlational, not causal, but customers who use their website had reported higher trust in their utility as a source of energy saving information. They reported 11% higher awareness of program rebate programs and 22% higher use of rebate programs. And they were also somewhat more satisfied with their utility. But that's not causal, it's really correlational. And customers who are using their utility website do seem to be more engaged with their utility and more satisfied. But I think more important to this question of sort of how these resources vary across people is that we're seeing that among those who use the website once, a majority also used it actually more than once. So it seems to be that people with higher engagement are kind of using these products and resources across multiple decisions. We weren't able to do this analysis for Marketplace because of the small numbers, but we can see that over half of customers who use the website once had used it more than once. So the other question though is, so these resources are getting used, about a quarter of people are reporting that they're using their website, but we want the utility website. But we really wanted to know, how is this also varying across products? Because there's also a lot of variation in the purchase decision process across products. So we looked at information sources used by product category. So this has products on the x-axis with our energy efficient products on the left, going towards those electric and renewable products on the right. And I'm going to show this as line graph so you can kind of see the difference across these different categories of products. So for example, here, this is just showing the use of in-person retail information. And so you can see that's highest for LEDs and white goods, where customers are getting information by going to a store, and lowest for smart products in the middle, where customers seem to be less likely to get information from an in-person source. So I'm going to start layering these on, and this is a lot of information, but it's interesting. So I think we can look at here, the retail website is really, and reviewer channel, product review websites are lowest for LEDs, right? LEDs are pretty low decision lift. So people are probably going to search for less sources, and we're seeing that here. People are most likely to look for information in person. And then finally, we can layer on the social sources, and we can see that actually both looking for information from friends and family and social media are kind of increasing somewhat left to right. So customers are more likely to use social sources among smart thermostats, induction stoves, rooftop solar, and EVs, and these are products that are new, and they're also visible technologies. And finally, our sources of interest are really the utility channels, the website and marketplace. So interestingly, for the website, we're seeing that actually reported use is lowest, again, for energy efficiency purchases, and highest for some of these electrification and renewable purchases. And Marketplace is showing, to some extent, also showing that trend, but I think we're a little bit suspicious of the Marketplace data, because I think this may be suggesting that because of the high numbers, customers may not really understand what Marketplace is. But I think the yellow here is showing the variance across different product channels and how people are using the utility website. And there are a couple of explanations for this. People may be looking at their utility more for kind of renewable and decarbonization products, but also overall information search is higher for new products with lower adoption. So customers may be looking for more information overall, and that includes going to the utility website. And this may have to do with the fact that these are early adopters. Alternatively, customers may also feel like they don't have a reason to go to their utility website because they know everything about energy efficiency already. So they may not have a reason to use that information channel. So returning to our hypothetical relationship here between overall utility customer engagement and trust, we're seeing high levels of trust, and that trust is corresponding to website use. But some customers, and because some customers are using the website multiple times, but we are seeing this gap between levels of trust and levels of use. And that gap is particularly high for energy efficiency products. And this is really something that we can continue to monitor and understand and develop a robust, use this as a framework to develop kind of a robust engagement strategy and make sure that customers are aware of the tools and that those tools are meeting the barriers across all product categories. So I just want to end by giving a little bit of a preview into the next step on this research. We're really diving into the second half of this, which is the product trust and adoption. And so kind of really, yeah, so focusing, so far we've been looking at trust as a unidimensional construct, but we're moving to understand the dimensions of trust. Because trust is actually not just one dimension, it can make up a number of different elements of trust. So we're going to be looking at these in this next phase. And we're also going to be looking at trust not just among the utility, but among the actual products, and looking at how trust is varying across the energy ecosystem and these different products, types, and brands. So those include utility, smart products, retailers, tech companies, service providers, appliances, and installers. And so looking at how these different levels of trust are influencing customers, not just at the utility, but at the product side as well. Thank you so much. I will open it up for questions.
Wait, we're not doing questions.
Not opening up for questions. I take it back. I will say thank you and turn it over.
Instead, we're going to do something terrible to all of our audience, which is we have quizzes after each section. After each speaker, we're going to have a little quiz to see whether or not you've been paying attention. I promise we won't, you don't fail if you get them all wrong. It's totally fine. But just as a fun way to keep us all engaged. So we have a little poll. If Emma, if you could pop up that first poll, everybody vote. So recent purchasers of which of the following technologies reported highest rates of using their utilities website as a source of product information prior to purchase? So rooftop solar, washer dryer, LEDs, or refrigerator. Go ahead and put your answers in according to what Hale just told us. So we'll give everybody a few minutes. Don't forget to submit so we can see what the responses are. And also, as people are responding, I just want you to note that I'm seeing, the first questions pop up in the chat, and I'm pulling those out and I'm holding on to them for the end of the three speakers talking, so that don't worry, we're not going to lose your very awesome questions. Thank you, Patty, for already putting something in there. Very much appreciated. All right, we'll give everybody just another minute to respond. All right, so Hale, do you want to tell us the correct answer?
The rooftop solar has it. In fact, the highest source of utility website was among rooftop solar purchasers.
Phenomenal. Thank you so much, Hale. Really appreciate it. It's always so weird to be in a silent room, but we're all clapping on the inside for you. We'll clap out loud. And with that, we're going to move on to Anastasia. I realized I talked about where Hale was from. I didn't mention where Anastasia or Lisa was from. Anastasia is coming to us from lovely New York. So we're going West Coast, flipping over to the East Coast, and Anastasia, take it away.
All right, thank you. Can everyone see my screen? All right. All right. Well, yeah. Thanks for joining me. So I'm going to be talking about a really cool project that wrapped up this year. We created a energy assurance plan for the U.S. Virgin Islands. Unfortunately for me, it all occurred during COVID, so I was not able to travel to the U.S. Virgin Islands for some of the community engagement piece, but we still had a lot of fun building this plan. So I'm just going to start off a little bit. Maybe I can pull this down. Sorry. So I'm just going to start going through a little bit about the U.S. Virgin Islands. So it's a U.S. territory. It's made up of 4 islands. It's about 100,000 people. St. John, St. Croix, St. Thomas, and then a really small island called Water Island. It's in the Caribbean, about 1,000 miles southeast of Miami. The economy is really sustained by tourism, and they're very, very vulnerable. Because of that, their economy is very, very vulnerable to natural disasters. So for example, their entire GDP in 2018 was $4 billion. And after the back-to-back hurricanes Maria and Irma of 2017, the damages were about $11 billion. So you can, it was over 2 times their normal GDP was the damages from those storms. So in terms of their energy supply, most of their, or almost all of their energy comes from imported petroleum products, mostly from Europe and other countries in the Caribbean basin. They have a small but growing renewable resources. So they have a couple of solar fields, and they're growing and putting more online. They also have a pretty robust net metering program from solar hot water heaters and rooftop solar, mostly residential. So they're very vulnerable to supply chain disruptions as well as hurricanes. And so, yeah, to just kind of go through some of the energy hazards and threats, this picture on the right here is from Hurricane Maria. So, hurricanes and major storms is really makes up the bulk of their energy hazards. As I mentioned earlier, in 2017, they were hit with double punch of Maria and Irma, Category 5 hurricanes, and it caused significant damage to the electrical grid. It was really, in the news a lot during that time. And it actually, it affected the U.S. Virgin Islands as well as Puerto Rico. There's almost 50,000 of the 100,000 total U.S. Virgin Island residents that were without power. And actually, between the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, it ended up being the biggest energy or blackout in U.S. history. So it just ended up really devastating their energy grid. So aside from hurricanes and major storms, just kind of your run-of-the-mill grid equipment failures, aging equipment, high winds, things like that. As well as some supply chain disruptions. As I mentioned, most of their power comes from imported oil. And so that, any disruptions in that supply chain can be really devastating. And some of those disruptions come from natural disaster, geopolitical upheavals, and, a variety of different sources for those threats. Additionally, their grid is vulnerable to cyber attacks as well. So most of our project really was about looking at the hurricanes and major storms, since that makes up the majority of their vulnerability is to those threats. So just kind of getting into our general energy assurance plan. So the EAP was a supplement to their overall territorial emergency operations plans. The goal of this framework was the goal of the plan was to provide a framework for before, during, and after energy disruptions. The plan reviewed the energy emergencies that are facing the USVI. We also did a large portion of the report was talking about the different communication protocols and parties responsible for preparing, responding, and recovering and mitigating energy disruptions, so brownouts and blackouts. We also worked, and I'll go into this in later slides, a energy profile that went through the demand and supply of the U.S. Virgin Islands, how where's the grid located, where are your, critical infrastructure and things like that. We created a energy data tracking plan to help the U.S. Virgin Islands Energy Office monitor key energy supply data and demand data and disruption data as well. So they're able to kind of track and distribute the energy data before, during, and after emergency. So then they can kind of review it and create a continuous improvement plan for blackouts. Additionally, we identified resiliency strategies for energy disruption. So how grid hardening and things like that. So in terms of community engagement, before we started building the plan, we wanted to make sure that it was practical and actionable. So we needed to talk to people kind of on the ground in both the energy emergency management. So our client, the U.S. Virgin Islands Energy Office, as well as the VITEMA, the Territorial Emergency Management Authority, VIWAPA, which is their utility, their water and power utility. As well as we work closely with the National Association of State Energy Officials. We also did we had a lot of conversations with the owners and operators of critical infrastructure. So their Department of Health, as well as any of the major hospitals and healthcare facilities, as well as information technology and finance, to make sure that the internet was up as quickly as possible and that people could get information that they needed during disruptions, as well as a lot of the health and human services programs that provide critical services to vulnerable populations to make sure that they were able to operate after energy disruptions as well. Transportation, of course, and public works, and then the fire and police department emergency management groups. So we kind of did this in a couple of ways. One, we assembled a working group. This was just kind of a higher level group to kind of make sure that the strategies and the information that we were providing was in fact practical and actionable. We also developed tabletop training exercises where we trained all of the key players on how to use the energy plan, as well as make sure that they're familiar with how it is in relation to their other emergency management documents. We also created improvement plans and after action reports to make sure that this is kind of a breathing document that is constantly being improved and is relatable and actionable in future years as well. So responding to an energy emergency, as I mentioned, the territorial energy emergency operations plan is the overarching kind of guidelines for emergencies or major disasters, and that's handled by VITEMA, the Emergency Management Authority of the Virgin Islands. And as part of that plan, there is the ESF 12, which is provides specific guidelines for energy emergencies and different protocols for how different groups respond during energy emergencies. And then our EAP is kind of a supplement to that to help the Energy Office collect, analyze, and disseminate key disruption data to the right people during and after energy emergencies. So this is just some more information on the U.S. Virgin Islands energy profile. As I mentioned, 90% is from imported fuel. The fuel also it manages the electrical grid or powers the electrical grid, as well as desalination plants. So all of their drinking water is from these desalination plants. So that's another piece of key critical infrastructure that's vulnerable to energy disruptions as well. And then the other major place that the petroleum products go to is retail fuel. So just like jet fuel, heating, cars, things like that. So in terms of their generation assets, they have 2 primary generation stations on each that power each of the electrical grids, and they have some solar and net metering. So the U.S. Virgin Islands is interesting because they have 2 separate electricity grids because the ocean is too deep to actually get power lines through to kind of power both or all 4 islands from one grid. So they had to actually build 2 separate grids to ensure that they're able to power. So it's actually that provides additional resilience, just that having those two grids, but it does pose very maintenance issues. So this is just kind of goes through some of the resiliency strategies that we help them work out. A lot of them were grid hardening measures. So that would mean like composite poles, burying power lines, making sure that the substations were hardened and that equipment was up to date, as well as ensuring that there is a plan for if the fuel supply is disrupted. Which they've had to deal with in the past, as well as additional, looking at each piece of the critical infrastructure, the hospitals and things like that, to ensure that each one of those has a plan and technology in place that can help them survive and thrive during or after energy disruptions, and that they're able to, for example, in hospitals, that their generators are large enough, that they have enough fuel, how long can they go without power from the grid and things like that. We also developed a schedule for replacing some of the older equipment, the aging generation equipment, as well as reviewed their plans to increase solar and made suggestions for additional solar resources. Additionally, VIWIPA historically haven't provided energy efficiency, so demand side management strategies. So that's one strategy that we really try to drive home, because any energy efficiency is a resiliency strategy, because if you're not using as much energy, then it's less, it's more resilient. As well as identifying ways to use microgrids and district energy systems, specifically kind of overlaying on their critical infrastructure, as well as developing public awareness measures. So the community understands how to respond to energy emergencies, and that they have that they have a plan for their own households for surviving energy emergencies. So I think that's it. So thanks for listening to my presentation, and I'll give it back to you, Lauren.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anastasia. That was really wonderful to get an understanding of what's happening in the U.S. Virgin Islands. We're all clapping. And with that, we're up with our next quiz question. Emma, can you put it up for us? All right. What is the U.S. Virgin Islands' primary source of energy? Is it imported petroleum, coal, solar, or nuclear? And this is not what we hope it will be, or maybe, but what is it currently? So everybody go ahead and vote. Give everybody a few more seconds. All right, Emma, do we have critical mass? You clearly communicated, my goodness, 100%. Fantastic. It is indeed imported petroleum. And with that, we are going to move on to our final speaker, Lisa. And in the interest of consistency, Lisa is coming from beautiful Longmont, Colorado. So I really like that we're hitting like both coasts, and then the Intermountain West. We're getting like the full coverage across the United States in terms of time zones, but also in terms of the kind of work that's being done, and really excited to hear what she has to say. So with that, take it away, Lisa.
Great. Thanks so much, Lauren. Good afternoon or morning, everyone, depending on where you are. I'm Lisa Knobloch. I'm the Sustainability Program Manager with the City of Longmont in Colorado, as Lauren mentioned. Just pulling up my screen here. Can everybody see that okay? Perfect. All right. Yeah. There we go. All right. So I'm going to get started. First of all, let's see, make sure. There we go. I'm sure most folks are pretty familiar with this, but I just thought it would be really helpful to ground everyone in how we conceptualize the definition of sustainability in the work that we do. Again, I work with municipal government, and I'm definitely going to be talking about some more granularity as compared to some of the other the other panelists and what they were discussing about in terms of their community engagement. But I wanted to start first of all with the common definition that I'm sure everybody is familiar with of sustainable development from the Brundtland Commission, and the concentric circles, or often shown as the Venn diagram, with the people, planet, profit, or some variation thereof. And since the Brundtland report, really a lot of the focus in the sustainability field, at least in the mainstream sustainability field in the US, has been focused on environmental conservation and the triple bottom line framework. And a lot of amazing work has come out of that field and out of that history. But I want to highlight that a lot of people probably are not as familiar with this statement on the right-hand side, which is a follow-up to the definition from the Brundtland report, which really highlights and underscores the need to center people in the work that we do with sustainability, and that the failure to do so is going to inhibit our ability to meet our sustainability goals. And unfortunately, I think that we've really seen that play out over the last several decades. The conversation is really shifting to how we center equity more broadly in the work that we do in sustainability. And this is really how Longmont views the foundation of the work that we do in the sustainability program, which I will say is still only about 5 years into our program. So we're still pretty new. We definitely don't have all the answers. We're excited to share the learning that we've had through our approach, but we also look to the folks in the communities that have been doing this work for a long time, and we are excited to continue to be part of this conversation as it continues to evolve. The application of equity, particularly in sustainability, is a reflection of our understanding of equity as both a practice and an outcome, and something that we are continuously engaged in the work that we do. And as equity relates specifically to our climate action work, we aspire to this definition on the right-hand side, which comes from our Equitable Climate Action Team, or ECAT, which I'm going to talk about shortly, which is local policy and personal habits that reduce climate pollution and increase community resilience in ways that do no harm and that support all communities according to their needs. So as the focus of this panel, we recognize that building community trust is really critical in creating a sustainable community. And because as government, we recognize that we can't do it all, nor should we. We have a lot of constraints as government. So we really need to partner with residents, with businesses, with NGOs, with community-based organizations and other sectors of the community to get this work done. And effective, meaningful, and equitable engagement is key in understanding how we best do that. Starting with, first of all, understanding community needs and priorities, as well as the historical work that's been done in a lot of different aspects in our community, and understanding how sustainability can support and advance that work rather than dictating what we think needs to happen from our perspective. Partnering with the community, focusing on building capacity, and then ultimately getting to this place of shifting power and resources. And I will say we follow this process, but it's an iterative process. There's no final destination point, and we are not yet at this place of shifting power and resources, but we are working toward that place. And today I'm going to be highlighting 3 particular programs that we have underway that demonstrate our learning from this approach. And that's the Equitable Climate Action Team, or ECAT, the Sustainable Business Program, and the SOUL program, which is sustainable opportunities, lifestyles, and leadership. So first of all, with the Equitable Climate Action Team, the foundation of the ECAT rests in our Just Transition Plan process. And this really kicked off after the city passed a resolution committing us to 100% renewable energy by 2030, followed by the city's first greenhouse gas inventory and report, which prioritized community co-benefits like affordability and public health, along with greenhouse gas reduction potential, because from our previous engagement work, we knew those were some of the primary needs and priorities from the community. And in that, we identified the need to create a just transition plan to ensure that the entire community benefits from that transition to 100% renewable energy. I'm not going to go through this full process on the right, but I just want to show that there were a lot of steps and work that's gone into this before we even got to the place of convening a community group to help us develop recommendations. And I want to highlight this call out box toward the bottom. We did a community survey of understanding people's household needs and burdens, and particularly around energy and energy services. And some of the findings that we came away with were pretty stark. Like 54% of respondents kept their home at a very uncomfortable temperature to afford their utility bill. Those are really, really stark findings. And this was pre-COVID, which we know has exacerbated a lot of these issues for our community. So this information has been really critical for us to understand that as we do climate action and sustainability work, we have to do that in partnership with folks that are most impacted, so that we don't create any situation that results in undue burden or unintended consequences for community members that create less affordability, higher rates that might push people out of our community. So we were actually just in the place of convening a committee to help us develop those recommendations when in October 2019, our city passed the climate emergency resolution. And this called for the convening of a climate action task force to develop recommendations to accelerate our action on climate change. And it also identified the importance of frontline community members being actively engaged and involved in that process. So this timing allowed us to convene both groups and run them concurrently. And the two groups collectively, sorry, I forgot my animation there, developed our climate action recommendations report. The climate action task force recommendations focused on the 6 topics that you see here on the left, with equity as a key component throughout. And the ECAT's recommendations focused on specifically on how to embed and apply equity to climate action work. The ECAT also helped the climate action task force evaluate their recommendations through an equity tool that was developed. And their recommendations have since been adapted to be a more comprehensive tool that staff is now utilizing in the implementation of the climate action task force recommendations. And we're really just in the beginning of this process. So there's a lot of learning for us to do in that space, but we're really excited to see it in action. And after the completion of the report, the ECAT actually decided to continue to meet as a group so that they can stay engaged in this work and help advise the city on equity and climate action, as well as support community engagement and capacity building on climate equity and justice in their respective communities. The next program that I want to highlight is the Sustainable Business Program, which was a strategy identified in our city's sustainability plan. Unfortunately, Bernice Garcia-Tiaz was going to try to join us for this presentation. She leads this program and she wasn't able to join us today, so I'm going to do my best to represent her amazing work. This is actually the first national city program that's based on the triple bottom line, not just the environmental portion of sustainability or a green business program. One of its unique aspects is it's a fully bilingual program, and it was developed that way from the very beginning, which is really important because about 30% of our population in Longmont identifies as Hispanic or Latinx, and we have a lot of Spanish-speaking owned businesses. Gold, silver, and bronze winners are assigned based on a weighted point system in the areas that you can see on this slide. The program was launched in 2019, so just over 2 years ago, with 18 participants, and now has had 124 businesses engaged in the program, 42 of which have become certified. 13 of those are minority-owned businesses, and already this year, 25 Latino-owned businesses have participated in the program. Equity-based community engagement has been really critical to the success of this program. And we found that traditional outreach strategies aren't enough if we really want to have an equitable program that benefits all businesses in our community. And in order to do that, you really have to have a focus on building trust first and meet people where they're at. If possible, hiring staff that are multilingual and ideally multicultural is really beneficial. And also really being willing and able to adapt and change the system, because we know that traditional systems often have biases and discrimination that are built into the process, which can make it difficult, if not impossible, for many folks to participate and see the benefits of sustainability work. And above all, leading with empathy so that people know that you care and that you're invested in their success. And then I want to highlight one particular participant in the program, which is Taco Star. Through the improvements made possible through the program, they're now saving over $3,000 per year. It's been really beneficial to their business. And they're actually now helping to lead this, our new ambassadors program, which is mentoring other businesses to make sustainability improvements and opening doors in a more sustainable fashion to become resilient and create long-term solutions. And then some key takeaways that I just want to highlight for success in this program. Again, partnerships. Partnerships are really key to making sustainability work possible. Creating a safe platform for BIPOC participants, recognizing that a diverse workforce is a real asset, utilizing approaches such as targeted universalism to ensure that equity is embedded into your programs and your outcomes, and then really seeing sustainability offices as an opportunity to advance equity-based programming. And then the very last program that I want to talk about is the SOUL program, which stands for Sustainable Opportunities, Lifestyles, and Leadership. This is still a nascent program, but already showing great success and opportunity. This program is done in partnership with our Community Services Department. So we're in Public Works and Natural Resources. So this is a unique partnership in our organization with the Community and Neighborhood Resources Division, which are the folks that really are on the ground in the community with those relationships that understand those needs and priorities. The program focuses on household engagement through sustainability practices. We train community technicians to go into people's homes and do a basic sustainability assessment and do direct in-home installs of things like LED lighting and water efficient fixtures. And they also help connect folks with other resources and services that they might be eligible for. So they'll talk through with people and understand, what are their needs. And they'll actually sit down with folks with a tablet and help walk them through an application for things like SNAP benefits or the city's utility rebate and assistance programs. But the greater value in this program is that we're really focusing on building those long-term relationships and building community capacity. In the longer term, we hope to partner with local workforce development programs to incorporate those elements as well. We're not quite there yet, but we think that there's a lot of opportunity there. We are expanding our staff that are going to be able to support this program in 2022. So we're really excited to see how this success evolves. So with that, I'll say thank you to everyone for your time today, and I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Lisa. That was really illuminating. I love how across this set of speakers we went like zooming way out 30,000 foot view, getting right down to like tree level view of understanding how to build trust in different ways. For anybody who's looking for what's the thread between these three, I think this notion of how do we create trust, whether it's with our utility systems, whether it's with our community, I think is obviously pretty critical. I know there was a lot of chat during our opening session today with Michael Pollan about individual behavior versus collective action versus, large organizations tackling issues of sustainability. And I think that these three speakers have done a really good job of showing us all the different levels at which we can have impact and the incredible importance of building trust with our communities in order to see that change happen, right? It's individual level, but it's community action overall that's going to make the difference. So thank you. That was very moved by all of your talks and makes me feel hopeful. So with that, we have one last poll question, then we're going to open it up to questions. So here it is. So what are the three programs that were highlighted that are focused on equity? Was it Sustainable Business Programs, Equitable Climate Action Team, and Sustainable Opportunities, Lifestyle and Leadership Program? Was it Climate Action Task Force, Efficiency Works, and the Sustainable Business Program? Or was it Sustainability Evaluation System, Equitable Climate Action Team, and Bike to Work? So what were the programs that Lisa highlighted that kind of drove the greatest engagement and trust in her programs, I'm like not using proper words. You guys understand what I'm saying? Pick one, see if you can get it right. Oh, I'm from KJ. I saw a poll wasn't visible. Did everybody else see the poll? Most people? Sorry, KJ. If you want to yell out your choice, you can do that. All right. Do we have enough, Emma? All right, 89% went with the first option. Lisa, was that the correct option?
It was, yes. So I'm sorry I made those answers very long.
So there's a mouthful for me to read.
It was, but you did a good job.
Thank you all so much for participating. So as these things often go, despite the fact that we were one speaker down, we managed to take up most of the time. There were quite a few questions that popped up for all of our speakers. And so in the next few minutes before we break out, let me see if I can hit a few. It's our very first one is for Hale, and it comes from Patty. And she says, wow, last year, 18% of respondents purchased an energy efficient washer or dryer or refrigerator. If consistent year to year, that correlates with a 5.5-year turnover rate, but expected useful life of these appliances is 10 to 13 years. Do you draw any useful conclusions from that? Are they taking advantage of some new technology for an early efficiency upgrade?
Yeah, great question. I think that brings up a couple of things. So this was a really high level study where we tried to do a bunch of different things at once. So the methodologist in me says, we have kind of maybe some data quality issues, right? Which when you're at, and also I think importantly, some self-report issues of people being confused about the questions. We tried to vet this as well as possible, but there may be some issues on there. But I would take this was more, the purpose of that question was less to get at actually kind of the prevalence of upgrades, because I think there's some secondary market characterization data that's going to be more accurate there, and more just to as a filter to allow people to answer the next question. So I think that, this might be a little bit of a biased sample of people who are, although we really tried to control for it, kind of more interested in energy. But I think in general, I would not from that expect that the prevalence of upgrades is a lot higher in the sample.
Great, thank you. So I'm sorry, I'm going to just kind of cruise through this since we don't have much time. But next question is for Anastasia from Dan. He asks, can you talk a bit more about how the EAP envisions engaging the community? What channels, methods do you see working most effectively?
Yeah, so, during our working sessions and our tabletop exercises, we talked a lot about how we want to provide information to the community about helping them protect themselves against energy disruptions and what to do in the case or in the event of an energy disruption. And we've talked a lot about using kind of the utility VIWAPA as the mouthpiece for a lot of those through mailers and things like that. And then we talked a little bit about each of the other organizations finding ways to communicate that information through their services as well.
Wonderful. And then we're going to get one in for Lisa, although there are a bunch that are dropping in. I'm trying to pull them so that at least maybe we can share out later. But of course, you can go into the breakout rooms and ask them as well. But one final question for Lisa from KJ. Can you talk more about the equity tool created by ECAT? What's involved and is it open source?
Yeah, absolutely. So the equity tool that was developed for the process in which we were developing the climate action recommendations report was a pretty basic adaptation of some familiar tools if people have done any work in this space or have worked at all with GARE, which is the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. And I can drop the link in the chat to our final climate action recommendations report. It goes into all of the recommendations from the ECAT and all of the tools that they use. But essentially, it's a pretty high level questionnaire to apply to recommendations, talking about who might be most impacted, who might most benefit from a particular strategy, who might be harmed, and how might those harms be mitigated. So it's just a way to really flag a particular recommendation or different recommendations that might have positive equity impacts or negative equity impacts, and how might you approach those in a way that allows you to still move forward and to get work done, but that doesn't create that undue harm to, say, low-income communities. And I'll drop that link in the chat when I can grab it here.
Fantastic, thank you.